it's got to be said, and I must say it, it's an embarrassment for our law enforcement that a private prosecuting arm is being celebrated when in fact we should be celebrating our public prosecuting authorities.
Most certainly, and I can tell you to my left, I'll ask my colleague Katlaza to show you the guys outside the court. They've been chanting Gerrie, AfriForum, AfriForum. Of course, that's because I'm standing right next to the AfriForum's private prosecutions leader, and that's Advocate Gerrie. Gerrie, yesterday when we spoke, you said in no uncertain terms that this was an assassination and not a robbery. However, inside court, it seems as though the details that were emerging are indicating the opposite.
I'm very concerned. I think we should all be very concerned that what happened in court today is not in line with what we were being briefed by the police. So I'm still satisfied that the brief I received from the investigating team is on track. I understand what the investigating team briefed me on, the evidence they made available to me, the evidence they told me about. So I'm still where I was yesterday, that this was a hit. I was concerned when I read the document that was read out by the prosecutor today. So, no, I'm still where I am, but this now just will ensure that we have to stay involved. We have a bigger role to play now to make sure that the apparent contradiction between the police and the NPA is not to such an extent that it will prejudice the case, because we shouldn't prejudice the case because of a misunderstanding between the police and the NPA. That we shouldn't do.
Advocate, you're aware, as those of us who are inside court, that the NPA sent a document by mistake asking questions. There was an internal communication, but in it, two very explosive things are being asked there. One, why were the EMPD the ones to transport the suspect and not the SAPS? But two, even more critical, because there was an expectation here. There was a question around Kelly Khumalo's communication, cell phone records being requested, her communication between her and one of the suspects. Now, does this form part of the brief that you were given, Advocate?
Zianda, you also know that the prosecutor made a passionate plea about the document that came into the possession of the media. I've indicated yesterday that I will not divulge all the information that was relayed to me, but what I can say is that I'm exactly in the same position with the same understanding about this case as I was yesterday. I am concerned with the indictment that was read into the record today, and it just makes it so much more important for us to remain involved, to ensure that this apparent misunderstanding, that it cannot derail the case or prejudice the case. So there's clearly some kind of misunderstanding between the two parties. I hope not. I've only been exposed to what you've been exposed to. I've had a briefing with the police. I did not have a briefing with the prosecution. Not at all.
But you can understand, sorry to jump in there, Advocate, that this also creates a lot of confusion, between the AfriForum prosecutions team, the NPA, and what's been said out there in the public domain. What are you going to do next, other than staying on? What exactly do you mean when you say that?
We'll have to communicate with people. The first stop would be to communicate with the police. I mean, the police have shared their information with us, so we'll have to go back there. We have to really establish what they've said to us and take it further, because we cannot allow Zianda. I mean, this is bigger than AfriForum. This is bigger than NPA AfriForum. This is a matter. This is justice. We will do what we can to ensure that justice is done, in whichever way. But we have to cross this hurdle, and the hurdle is, what are we dealing with? Are we dealing with a hit? And if we're dealing with a hit, the question should be, do we have enough evidence to deal with the mastermind, not the refusal to accept that we're dealing with a hit.
So by the time you come back to court, this matter returns to court on the 27th of November. There will be answers, surely?
Well, what we'll be able to do is to tell you what we've done to ensure that there will be answers. For us now, I think it's so important to sit down with our clients, to explain to our clients what's going on. Because you're concerned, I'm concerned. Just think of a grieving family, how this will now concern a grieving family. You've all seen the mother yesterday. So is this now more confusion? Is this now more trauma? So that is my first call, is to ensure that the family and my clients understand exactly what was going on. But this is bigger than all of us. I'm sure we can fix this. I'm sure that by the time that this matter is ready for trial, that there will be an understanding between all the parties.
Last one from me, advocates, and I'm asking this because just yesterday I questioned you about possible two factions within the police service that are operating, and this came from the Mayiwa family. They're saying there are two investigating teams. That's why the case didn't move. And you said to me during your press conference that you don't want to address that. Perhaps then is the time to address that, seeing that there's misunderstanding or miscommunication between you and the brief that you got from police?
I'm still not going to address that particular aspect. But what I want to say is we're not dealing with that anymore. We're not dealing with the internal misunderstanding in the police.
But it could have impacted on the reason why the brief was different, advocates. Can we at least acknowledge that?
Well, I can't acknowledge it because I don't know. And Zayanda, I'm not doing anything that would prejudice this case further. We cannot do that. I think we should all now work together to make sure that justice is done. We've waited 6 years for this. We cannot allow this to continue any further.
Well, there you have it, Xoli. That's advocate Gerrie, of course, really reflecting on the confusion that we all experienced inside the courtroom this morning, especially, Xoli, when advocate George Baloyi was reading out what is the facts of the case. He was reading out the charge sheet, and really a contradiction to what Gerrie just yesterday was speaking about. And of course, yesterday, during that exclusive interview with Ntomfuti Mayiwa, she was speaking about two investigating teams, one that's corrupt and one that works well with Police Minister Begitele, and still lots of questions, Xoli, about whether or not that has had an impact on the different versions of what happened on the 26th of October 2014 really took place.
I've got to tell you, Zianda, you have to respect the professionalism and just being invested in seeing to it that the perpetrators serve time for what they did here. Gerrie, I have another level of respect for him.